All right, let's get into some other federal issues and bring in Dennis Shanahan. The latest Newspoll figures are out and the Prime Minister is reaching record approval ratings. In personal approval terms, up 2 points from the last poll. Scott Morrison now sits at 58 points as preferred Prime Minister, while Anthony Albanese remains on 26. The PM's lead, though, is yet to have much of a positive impact on the coalition's broader support numbers. They are in front two-party preferred terms, at least the coalition's favour remains unchanged at 51-49. Primary vote results and Labor have lifted by 1 to 35 points, with the coalition sitting steady on 42. Bringing in, as I said, Dennis Shanahan now, the Australian's political editor, to discuss this and more. We haven't seen these numbers since Kevin Rudd Mark II, just after the Howard departure in 07-08. We haven't seen these sorts of numbers since then. What does it tell you?
Well, I think that it is a remarkable number for Scott Morrison. And I have to say, I was one of the people who felt that after his miraculous win and he started to drop a bit in the polls, particularly after the pressure he faced on the bushfire recovery period, that he may not recover, that the party would maintain its support, which it has, but that his personal support would be forever damaged. That hasn't happened. His response to the COVID pandemic has actually lifted him back to these record levels of Kevin 07. And I think that it is not just the fact that it's at this level, but it's come from when he was actually quite low. And so I think that the real takeout from these figures is that the Labor Party's primary vote continues to be low. Scott Morrison's personal standing has now gone through the roof, and the polling, the national polling, is indicating that the government would win an election now. And let's remember, they won an election at the last time, just over 12 months ago, on worse polling. So it comes down to the primary vote, and that's still very much in the coalition's favour, and it's demonstrating Scott Morrison's personal popularity. He's grown into the job and he's really excelling as in the polls as Prime Minister.
Couple of quick ones on that, Dennis. I think you make a very good point there. Scott Morrison was strengthening post-election. He fell away with the bushfires and he's come back. We didn't see when Kevin Rudd was so high in the polls where he came back from a downturn. When he went south, he sort of stayed south. Of course, it changed to Julia Gillard, and even when he came back, there wasn't a resurrection in his popularity. It's very unusual to see a politician, certainly a senior leader, suffer such a significant downturn as Scott Morrison did, but be able to sort of arrest that decline and now turn around in such positive territory. What do you put that down to? And secondly, why is it not necessarily at this stage, at least, translating into higher party numbers?
Well, I think you're right. This is remarkable in the fact that it is a recovery. It's not just a high number. It is a recovery.
Correct.
He's managed to come back now. Scott, when Kevin Rudd began to decline his personal support, the party support was actually still quite high. And I can remember writing at the time saying, something is going on here. Kevin Rudd's got a problem, and being attacked saying, oh, no, there's no problem. And yet, within 3 months, there was a real problem. And within 6 months, there was so much of a problem that the Labor Party decided to remove him. And so it was Kevin Rudd's personal support, which was the forerunner of his decline and the decline of the Labor Party. Scott Morrison's actually in the reverse, where the party has maintained its support and he has then recovered. Now, I think that what's at the bottom of this is clearly his leadership on COVID. He's been absolutely non-political, cunningly so, and he has worked with the state premiers of all different flavours. So he's demonstrated he wants to do the job, and he keeps saying, I'm concentrating on the job. So that's working for him. As far as the parties are concerned, my view is that the Labor Party, after suffering the loss, the unexpected loss, has found it difficult to attack Scott Morrison. They actually succeeded over Christmas and the bushfires, but they have since found it very difficult to attack him, and I think they've been seen as too negative. It was interesting to see you sometimes hear, and I'm sure you've thought of it from time to time, Peter, of code words that appear during Parliament sitting times, during press conferences. And I've noticed a couple of times Scott Morrison has said, referring to Anthony Albanese, he's whinging, he's whining. My suspicion is they are exactly the words being used by the focus groups, being fed back to Scott Morrison, and the problem for Labor at the moment. And I suspect it could be a problem in the Eden-Monaro by-election, where Labor is being seen as too negative at a time of national crisis, and that they have not been seen to be positive enough. And I think this is part of the problem.
Let me just pick up the Eden-Monaro by-election. We've seen some resurrection, it would appear, in the last week or so in National Party numbers. They're certainly running third in the race. They're not in contention with the two major parties, but they'll obviously feed into preferences on the coalition side through the Liberal Party. How's it looking for the weekend? Do you think that there is now more of a fight for Labor? Because they certainly had it their way at the very start.
Oh, I think definitely there is a bigger fight for Labor in holding on to Eden-Monaro. Let's look at it historically. Most times by-elections go with the party of the person who has resigned or left or died. That's just history. Rarely does it actually go where the seat changes hands and it is a government that picks up the seat. Most of the time, it's the opposition which picks up a government seat, as in the Canberra by-election, the Bass by-election, in the south coast of New South Wales, when the Greens picked up their first seat. All of these by-election results tended to go with the opposition. And that's no doubt Labor is favoured. They've got the preferences from the shooters and fishers. The Nationals have been divided. And I'm a bit sceptical about some of the national polling. We saw some very small sampling at the beginning, which suggested the National Party vote was quite low. But there's also 14 candidates.
Yeah, it is.
And it's very hard to tell. It's a large, diverse electorate. There are areas which are strongly Labor. There are areas which have been strongly affected by the bushfires, where Labor's message about Scott Morrison, and there is no doubt Scott Morrison was on the nose in the electorate over the bushfires, certainly was. He's recovered, and the question is, has that now subsumed the damage done by the bushfires? And people are now looking, just this week, the government announced $4,000, $10,000 grants have gone into Eden-Monaro businesses and self-employed people to help lift them out of the bushfire crisis, and then all of the JobKeeper and JobSeeker payments from COVID. There's a lot of government money going to Eden-Monaro. It's going in elsewhere, but the point is that this could be a difficult seat. It's a difficult seat to try and pick. Labor is favoured to win, but I think that there is enough out there, particularly with today's Newspoll, showing the popularity of the Prime Minister, for Labor to be a bit worried. Let's face it, if Labor wins, that's good. If Labor loses, that's very bad for Anthony Albanese.